Chapter 1. The volcanic magma-like temperature seemed to burn her body dry, and the only one who could save her was the man in front of her. She clung to the marble-like cool skin, and the instinct to survive finally made her give up resistance. The pain rose little by little with the pleasure, like fireworks constantly exploding in her mind, making her feel like a lonely boat in a blazing sea of fire. Floating and sinking, she couldn't extricate herself. "Hey, wake up, it's air-conditioned here. Don't catch a cold." The pressure on her shoulders made Ningxi wake up suddenly. She looked at the nurse's concerned eyes confusedly. She immediately blushed with guilt and avoided her eyes shamefully. Damn it, it had been a long time. After that night of drunkenness, she and Su Yan still appeared in her dreams from time to time. Fortunately, she was unconscious and had no memory of that night. Otherwise, she really didn't know how to face Brother Yan. Seeing that she had woken up, the nurse handed her the list in her hand. "You forgot to take your pregnancy test report. Dr. Zhang asked you to come again next week." Ningxi took the report, smiled sweetly, and carefully put the list into her bag. Su Yan was abroad for an investigation and would come back today. Thinking of the meeting at night, Ningxi couldn't help but feel nervous. Because the place where Su Yan lived was too isolated, she finally got in touch with him when the child was more than 7 months old. Thinking of Su Yan's shock when he knew she was pregnant, Ningxi was a little nervous. Was it because she was particularly sensitive during pregnancy? Ningxi always felt that Su Yan was not as happy as she was. The doctor comforted her that when a man had his first child, it was difficult for him to change his mind for a while. But, she couldn't take the initiative to ask for marriage, could she? Coming out of the hospital, the sun was blazing. Ningxi held her waist with difficulty and was about to flag a taxi. Suddenly, a dazzling red sports car rushed towards her. Ningxi's heart skipped a beat and she took a few steps back. With a harsh sound of the accelerator, the red sports car brushed past her clothes and stopped abruptly. Ningxi was so scared that her heart almost stopped beating. She just stood still and saw Ning Shuiluo, who was wearing a tight red dress and had big curly hair, getting out of the car. "Ning Shuiluo, are you crazy?" Ning Shuiluo looked at her and smiled meaningfully. She crossed her arms and walked like a cat. She stood in front of Ningxi and looked down at the big-bellied Ningxi with pride. "What, are you afraid that I'll kill the bastard in your stomach?" Quote, Ningxi subconsciously covered her lower abdomen and took a step back. She looked at her warily and said, "Ning Shuiluo, don't go too far." Even though she knew that Ning Shuiluo had always been at odds with her, Ningxi did not expect her to say such vicious words. "I'm too much. You're the one who's going overboard. You got drunk and fooled around with a wild man, got pregnant, and now you want Su Yanxi to be the father. Tisk tisk, Ningxi, you're shameless." Quote, Ningxi paused. "What nonsense are you talking about? Oh, don't tell me you really believe that the person you slept with that night was Su Yan." Ning Shuiluo laughed her head off. "You said that you and Su Yan grew up together and were childhood sweethearts. You don't even know what his body looks like." The more Ningxi listened, the paler her face became. Standing under the scorching sun, she felt cold all over. That's right, the man that night. She only thought that Su Yan might be stronger than she had imagined after he became an adult. Now that Ning Shuiluo reminded her maliciously, she suddenly remembered that in addition to his physique, the man that night seemed to be different from Su Yan in many aspects. Chapter 2. Let me tell you the truth. That night, you drank my spiked wine. Don't talk about how unsatisfied you were. I was kind enough to find 2 strong men for you. Who knew that you would be so ungrateful and barge into a wild man's room? You even, Ning Shuiluo said in a disgusted tone, Brother Yan is too kind. He was afraid that you wouldn't be able to accept it when you woke up, so he said that it was him that night. Quote, you, Ningxi trembled with anger. Hearing this, she couldn't help but pinch Ning Shuiluo's wrist. Why did you do this to me? Why, haven't you done enough harm to me? Quote, Ning Shuiluo frowned and was about to push Ningxi away. But when she saw Su Yan behind Ningxi, her voice immediately softened and she looked pitiful. Sister, I know I was wrong. If you want to beat or scold me, just do it to me. Don't blame Brother Yan. Ningxi was stunned. The next second, she saw Ning Shuiluo suddenly fall to the ground. That posture, it seemed that she had pushed her. Ningxi, What are you doing? She heard a scolding voice behind her ear. Ningxi turned around in surprise and saw Su Yan with a cold face. Su Yan passed by and helped Ning Shuiluo up. Shuiluo, are you okay? Ning Shuiluo almost hung on Su Yan. Brother Yan, I didn't mean to do it. I really know I was wrong, now it's all my fault, sister. Okay, I'm here. Su Yan patted Ning Shuiluo's shoulder and asked her to get in the car. I'll explain it to Ningxi. Ning Zai's mind went blank. She watched Su Yan walking towards her and his mouth opening and closing. He talked for a long time. He talked about their childhood, his struggle in love with Ning Shuiluo, his anger when he found out that Ning Shuiluo had framed him, his shock and guilt when he found out that Ningxi was pregnant, and his acceptance of Ning Shuiluo's apology. Finally, he said, Ningxi, I'm sorry. I can't marry you. It's not because of what happened that night and this child. It's because I can't let Shuiluo down anymore, and I don't want to cheat my feelings anymore. Quote, in the past few months, he had gone abroad with Ning Shuiluo. After spending so much time with her, he couldn't bear to part with her. Even though he admitted that he had sex with Ningxi that night in order to redeem himself, he had already chosen Ning Shuiluo in his heart. Therefore, after learning that Ningxi was pregnant, he immediately went to the Ning family to explain everything to his parents and told Ningxi the truth. In other words, Su Yan, you knew from the beginning that Ning Shuiluo was the one who drugged me. Did you tell me it was you that night to protect her? Ningxi, who had finally found her voice, looked at the calm Su Yan in a daze. Ningxi, Shuiluo didn't do it on purpose. She's young and impulsive. What about me? Ningxi looked up at Su Yan, her face full of despair. Have you ever thought about me? Su Yan didn't say anything. After a long time, he reached out to pull Ningxi. The sun is strong here. Let's go home first. Don't touch me. Ningxi pushed Su Yan's hand away and suddenly laughed. Until now, Ningxi felt that she was living like a joke. In order to come to Su Yan's city, she had to study so hard to get into B University. In order to please Su Yan, she gave up her dream of acting. In order to be a match for him, she abandoned her adoptive parents and returned to the Ning family. All day long, she clumsily tried to please these so-called celebrities. In the end, she only got one sentence. I can't let Shuiluo down. Ning Shuiluo not only took her identity, but also her biological parents. Now, she even took away her sweetheart. Ning Shuiluo was young. Could her mistakes be forgiven? Then, who would pay for her life? She didn't even know who the man that night was. Ningxi covered her face. Her body trembled like a sieve. She had reached the limit of despair. Su Yan saw Ningxi walking to the road in a trance and threw away the cigarette. Su Yan saw Ningxi walking to the road in a trance and threw away the cigarette between his fingers. When he was about to catch up with her, Ning Shuiluo pulled his sleeve and said, Brother Yan, where are you going? While Su Yan was hesitating, he heard a loud noise. Ningxi, who was walking on the zebra crossing, was thrown out and fell heavily on the ground. Help, help, I bumped into a pregnant woman. In the dazzling light, Ningxi saw the swaying figures and the two disgusting faces. The tightness and pain in her stomach made her lose consciousness bit by bit. She only blinked once and the blood on her forehead gushed into her eyes. The world fell into darkness. Chapter 3. 5 years later. In the deserted corridor on the top floor of Eden Bar, Ningxi had been drinking with the investor all night and had a splitting headache. She was going to find a quiet place to sober up, but Chongli followed her, so she had to brace herself. What's up, Sister Chong? Ningxi, let me ask you, did you sign up for the audition of the leading actress in the world? Yes, why? You're not allowed to go tomorrow. As her agent, Chongli stopped her from auditioning for the role that was highly sought after by all the major entertainment companies. Ningxi was not surprised. She just raised her eyebrows and asked, why? How dare you ask me for the reason after making the decision behind my back? Don't you know that the company has arranged for Shuiluo to audition? Quote, it doesn't seem to conflict with the company's arrangement. Ningxi looked at her with a faint smile. Ning Shuiluo asked you to come to me. Could it be that she's afraid that an unknown actor like me will steal her role? Quote, do you have the ability to steal Shuiluo's role? You're dreaming. Let me tell you, don't waste your time. The Ning family has invested 30 million yuan in this show, and Shui Luo has already been selected. Quote, in that case, why are you so nervous? You're my artist, so you have to listen to my arrangements. Chong Li said matter-of-factly. Oh, Sister Chong also knows that I'm your artist. Ning Shi, I don't have time to bicker with you. Since you don't know what to do, don't blame me. As soon as she finished speaking, Ning Shi felt a strong force coming at her. She was pushed into the warehouse of the bar and her phone was snatched away. With a bang, the door was slammed shut. Ellipsis. The footsteps outside the door faded away. Ning Shi knew it was useless to shout, so she slid down the door and sat on the ground indifferently. When she first joined the company, Ning Shui Luo knew to restrain herself. At most, she would ask Chong Li to arrange some vicious villains for her. But recently, she had gone too far and even resorted to such low-level means. If she couldn't get the role this time, she would have to find a way to leave Starlight Entertainment. As her thoughts were in a mess, she suddenly heard a slight sound. Was there a mouse? Ning Shi looked in the direction of the sound and was stunned. She saw a little boy behind a pile of boxes. The little fellow looked to be about 4 or 5 years old. He looked like he was carved from jade, and he was like a white and soft little bun. He was hiding in a corner and shivering, and his pitch-black eyes were filled with vigilance. Why would there be kids in the bar's warehouse? There shouldn't be such an unreliable customer who would bring a child to a bar, right? Hey, little bun, who are you? How did you get in? Quote, sneaked in. He was also locked up by someone. Do you want candy? After asking for a long time, the child did not say a word. He only trembled even more violently, like a frightened little animal. So Ning Shi stopped talking. It had nothing to do with her anyway. Just like that, the two of them occupied a corner and stayed there peacefully. At this moment, the light bulb above their heads. Chapter 4. The little bun was so scared that his face turned pale. However, Ning Shi sat down next to the little bun and did nothing. She closed her eyes and went to sleep. Tonight, Chong Li took her to drink with people everywhere, so she had a terrible headache. When Ning Shi woke up, she felt something warm on the side of her leg. She looked down and saw that the little bun was rubbing against her leg and his little hand was still holding the corner of her clothes. Ning Shi laughed. When she was in the countryside, she had a cat. It was very timid and scared of people. It would run away when it saw people. However, as long as you didn't pay attention to it and let it relax and feel that you were not a threat, it would sneak up to you and even climb onto your knees to sleep. The little bun noticed her gaze and blushed. But this time, there was no panic in his eyes. Instead, his big eyes were full of curiosity. He really looked like a little kitten, even the look in his eyes. Ning Shi smiled and her hands were itchy. Finally, she couldn't help but reach out her hand to rub the furry head. As soon as he touched it, his expression immediately changed. Why was his forehead so hot? Do you have a fever? Chong Li would lock her up at least until the end of the audition tomorrow, or even longer. The child might be in danger if he continued to have a fever. She was anxious and found that something was wrong. The light bulb was broken. Why was there still light in the room? She looked up and found there was a small skylight above her head. Starlight sprinkled down from the window. Ning Shi looked around and brought a ladder over. Little bun, come here. I will help you out. For the first time, the little boy responded to her words. He shook his head and looked determined. Ning Shi understood what he meant and pinched his face with a smile. You are quite loyal. You want to share the joys and sorrows with me. Go up. The window is too small for me to get out. You go out first and then find someone to save me. Quote, seeing that the little boy was still hesitating, Ning Shi picked him up and put him on the ladder. Come on, don't waste time if you are a man. I will protect you from below. Finally, she sent the child out. Ning Shi felt dizzy and her legs gave way. She fell down from the ladder. Next to the window, when little Bun saw this scene, a great amount of fear appeared on his previously lifeless little face. Ning Shi forced herself to say one word. Go. Under the starlight, the woman's pale and haggard face could not hide her breathtaking beauty. Especially that pair of eyes, they were clear and beautiful, and they seemed to be filled with an ocean that reflected the stars. She was no longer the country bumpkin and ugly duckling she used to be. But what was the use of that? Ningxi smiled bitterly. She hadn't gotten her revenge, and she was going to fall to her death here. However, he had saved a little bun before he died, so it could be considered a good deed. If her child hadn't died back then, he would probably be around this age. After the car accident 5 years ago, the Ning family felt that she was a disgrace and sent her to a diploma mill that specialized in accepting rich playboys, leaving her to fend for herself. She dropped out of school and applied to USC again, absorbing all kinds of knowledge like crazy. Because she wanted to defeat Ning Shuiluo and take back everything that belonged to her. Most importantly, acting was her biggest dream in this life. After returning to China, with her good looks and solid acting skills, she was spotted by Chong Li and successfully entered the industry's largest management company, Starlight Entertainment. Her path to stardom was supposed to be smooth, but Ning Shuiluo also entered Starshine and bribed Chong Li to suppress her. Chapter 5. At the same time, the atmosphere in the reception room of Eden Bar was unusually heavy. The bar owner, manager, security guards, and related staff all stood in a row, trembling with fear. They all looked as if they were facing imminent disaster. Lu Group's little prince, Lu Tingxiao's precious son, had gone missing in their bar. On the sofa, Lu Tingxiao's face was as cold and hard as ever, like an ice sculpture without any extra expression. However, the pressure that belonged to a superior made everyone present feel weak in the legs and sweat like rain. They didn't even dare to breathe loudly. A young man was kneeling at his feet, crying and snot. "Brother, I'm sorry, it's all my fault. I shouldn't have brought Xiaobao to the bar. If anything happens to Xiaobao, I don't want to live anymore." Quote, as soon as he finished speaking, he was kicked in the chest. The sound of bones breaking made everyone's scalp go numb, and everyone in the room trembled. Lu Jingli clutched his chest and coughed for a while. He immediately got up and straightened his back. His parents were on vacation abroad and didn't know that Xiaobao was missing. If they knew, he would be skinned alive, and it wouldn't be as simple as being kicked by his brother. Lu Jingli's heart was in despair when someone suddenly knocked on the door of the reception room. The bar owner who was closest to the door opened it and was surprised to see no one there. He looked down and was stunned. Young master, Xiaobao, oh my god, Xiaobao, second uncle's sweetheart, where the hell did you run off to? Lu Jingli crawled up and hugged the little fellow tightly. He was so moved that he cried bitterly. Everyone in the room looked as if they had just survived a disaster. Lu Tingxiao walked to the door, grabbed Lu Jingli by the back of his collar, and threw him away. He then squatted down in front of his son. What's wrong? Xiaobao finally got out of his second uncle's clutches. He grabbed Lu Tingxiao's hand and anxiously tried to pull him out. As soon as Lu Tingxiao got close to his son, he could smell the scent of alcohol on him. Apart from that, there was also a faint fragrance. It wasn't the pungent smell of perfume. Instead, it was like a small flower that bloomed on a glacier, exuding a faint, cold fragrance. He felt an inexplicable sense of familiarity, and his heart even palpitated for a moment. Seeing that Lu Tingxiao didn't move, little Bao's little finger pointed towards a direction, and he was anxious to the point of emitting hoarse sounds. Lu Tingxiao picked up his son and walked in the direction his son pointed. Seeing this, Lu Jingli and the rest of the people behind him looked at each other and followed suit. 5 minutes later, the group stopped in front of the warehouse on the top floor. Xiaobao wriggled his body off his father and banged on the door of the warehouse with great force. He looked extremely anxious. What's wrong with Xiaobao? What's inside? Lu Jingli was confused. Lu Tingxiao ordered expressionlessly, "Open the door." Yes. The bar owner nodded, then turned his head and scolded the female manager beside him. "Manager Yi, what are you waiting for? Open the door. Where's the key?" Quote, open the door. The female manager froze. Oh no, Ningxi was still locked in there. She had promised Chong Li that she would lock her up until the end of the audition. However, with the two gods of the Lu family and her boss waiting, how could she say no? She could only take out the key and open the door with trembling hands. As soon as the door was opened, she saw a woman lying on the ground, unconscious. What's going on? Why is there a woman inside? The bar owner was furious. I don't know either. There wasn't anyone inside when I checked before. The female manager tried to explain with a guilty conscience. Hurry up, Save her first. Quote, as soon as someone tried to approach Ningxi, Xiao Bao immediately threw himself at Ningxi with a ferocious face, not allowing anyone to approach. Chapter 6. Boss Lu. The bar owner was at a loss. He couldn't figure out what was going on. Lu Tingxiao's gaze swept past the female manager, who looked guilty. Then, he glanced at the collapsed ladder on the ground and the skylight that could only fit a child. He could roughly guess what had happened. He raised his hand and dismissed everyone. Then, he walked over and carried the woman personally. The faint, cold fragrance in his arms became even more distinct. Seeing that Lu Tingxiao was going to carry her, Xiao Bao didn't stop him. However, he didn't look very willing. He looked as if he would have carried her himself if he wasn't so small. Ellipsis. First People's Hospital of B City. When Ningxi woke up, it was already the next morning. As soon as she opened her eyes, she saw a man sitting on a chair by the window. His slender legs were crossed casually. His well-tailored suit outlined his broad shoulders and thin waist. The buttons on his white shirt were meticulously buttoned up to his collar. Even though he was under the morning sun, his body seemed to be covered with an eternal layer of ice. His cold and arrogant expression was like that of a king in a medieval castle. The man seemed to sense her gaze. He suddenly raised his deep-sea eyes and shot a cold gaze straight at her. That gaze was too invasive. It was like a sharp scalpel dissecting her inch by inch. It was hair-raising. Ningxi shivered. She couldn't care less about the uncomfortable gaze of this strange man in front of her. She asked anxiously, "Sir, may I ask how I came here? Have you seen a little boy? He's 4 or 5 years old. He doesn't like to talk. He's fair and soft and looks adorable." Quote, adorable. The man raised his eyebrows at Ningxi's description. Then, his gaze shifted to her right. His voice was as cold as his. "You mean Xiao Bao?" Ningxi hurriedly followed the man's gaze. She saw a fair and soft little bun sleeping soundly on the small bed beside her. There was an IV drip on the back of his hand. "Yes, that's him. His name is Xiao Bao." Quote, Ningxi finally heaved a sigh of relief. She leaned over and touched Xiao Bao's forehead. The fever had subsided. She regretted saving the child earlier. After all, the child was too young and had a fever. In a chaotic place like the bar, what if something happened to him if he went out alone? Ningxi looked at the ice sculpture man again. "Are you this kid's?" As soon as the words left her mouth, Ningxi realized that she seemed to have asked for nothing. The big and the small looked like they were carved from the same mold. They were definitely father and son, biological children. As expected, the ice sculpture replied, "Father. Hi, beauty, you're awake. I'm Xiao Bao's second uncle." Suddenly a big face came over. Ningxi subconsciously stepped back. When she saw the man's face clearly, she was stunned. Lu Jingli. He was the second son of Lu Group and the boss of Shengxi Entertainment. Because of his outstanding appearance and romantic personality, he appeared in the entertainment pages of newspapers and magazines more often than artists. There was no way she would mistake that face for someone else. The ice sculpture man was Xiao Bao's father, and Lu Jingli was Xiao Bao's second uncle. Wasn't that ice sculpture Lu Jingli's brother, Lu Tingxiao? Lu Tingxiao was known as the god of fortune in the capital city. He was like the uncrowned king of the capital city. She never expected that the person she saved was Lu Tingxiao's legendary illegitimate son, the shiny little prince. Chapter 7. Lu Tingxiao sized up the woman on the bed, as if trying to figure out if the look of surprise on her face was real. After a while, he finally believed that she didn't know about Xiao Bao's identity, so he said coldly, "Your request." What request? Ningxi didn't understand the meaning of these words that came out of nowhere. "My brother wants to thank you for saving Xiao Bao. He wants you to make a request." Lu Jingli looked as if she had hit the jackpot. Ningxi thought quickly and then said cautiously, "Actually, you don't have to thank me. I did save Xiao Bao, but he also saved me. If Xiao Bao hadn't gone out to call for help, I would still be locked up in there. So we're even." Quote, although she had been lucky enough to save little crown prince, she didn't dare to take credit for it. The richer one was, the more paranoid they would be, not to mention the Lu family, which was a super rich and powerful family. It would be nice if they didn't suspect that she was up to something. Didn't Lu Tingxiao look at her as if she were a thief? To avoid future trouble, it was better to cut ties with them. Ningxi didn't think there was anything wrong with her answer, but Lu Tingxiao looked unhappy, which made her nervous. Did she say anything wrong? Why did he look so scary? Brother, don't look so scary. Those who know will think you're repaying a debt of gratitude, but those who don't know will think you're taking revenge. Lu Jingli couldn't bear to see the beauty being frightened, so he said to Ningxi, my brother doesn't like to owe people favors. You'd better make a request. Don't stand on ceremony. Quote, how could he force her to make a request? Ning's eyes mouth twitched. I'm not being polite. I'm telling the truth. If you don't believe me, you can check. No need. Lu Tingxiao's reply was concise and to the point. His expression was already slightly impatient. Lu Jingli said, there are surveillance cameras in the warehouse of the bar. I've seen them. Xiaobao ran in by himself. As for you, the bar manager admitted that she locked you in, so don't worry. We don't suspect you. You did save Xiaobao. You'd better make a request. Fine, he was back to square one again. In the end, Ningxi had no choice but to bite the bullet and say under Lu Tingxiao's threatening gaze, how about, you give me money? Don't rich people like this kind of direct way of repaying? With Lu Tingxiao's personality, he would probably like to use money to solve his problems. If she didn't want money, people might think that she had other intentions. If she didn't want money, could it be that she wanted someone? Just when Ningxi was certain that this was the most suitable request, Lu Tingxiao's expression turned even uglier. Ningxi was about to cry. Why did he have to be so stingy with his words? Couldn't he just say what he wanted to say? Could he die of exhaustion by saying a few words? Lu Jing touched his nose. My brother thinks it's too insulting to pay. Ningxi roared in her heart. It doesn't matter, come and insult me. The Lu family's identity was too special. She really didn't know what to ask for. Just when the situation was at an impasse, Lu Tingxiao spoke. Marry me. Ningxi was stunned for a second, then coughed violently, almost choking on her own saliva. Cough, 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 what did you say? When she finally stopped coughing, she immediately looked at Lu Jingli anxiously. Second young master, please translate. However, this time, it wasn't just Ningxi. Lu Jingli was also stunned. Brother, what do you mean? I can't translate this time. Quote, at this moment, Ningxi suddenly had an idea. She said shakily, is it because I saved your son that you've decided to repay me with your body? Lu Tingxiao nodded slightly. He thought for a moment and nodded. You can say that. Chapter 8. Ningxi looked at the man in front of her with an expressionless, cold face and said something shocking. She touched her forehead weakly. Doctor, where is the doctor? I think I might have broken my brain and am having hallucinations. Lu Jingli put on an innocent face and said, is my brain damaged even if I didn't fall? At this moment, Ningxi can't accept the fact even though she has been abused thousands of times. She saved a little bun and the little bun's father said he would marry her. If it were someone else, it would be fine. If he was a little handsome, it would be a romantic encounter. But this is Lu Tingxiao, Lu Tingxiao. In terms of appearance, she is not bad, but Lu Tingxiao has seen all kinds of peerless beauties. If he just likes her, she won't be so scared. It's understandable that Lu Tingxiao likes her face and wants to play with her. But he said, marry me, which is horrifying. Most importantly, don't you like men? Ningxi blurts out. Ha ha ha. Lu Jingli laughs. Lu Tingxiao's face is as dark as the bottom of a pot and the whole ward is suddenly overcast. After a long time, Lu Jingli finally holds back his laughter. If my brother likes men, then where did Xiaobao come from? Well, surrogacy, artificial insemination. If my brother likes men, why would he marry you? To cover up his true sexual orientation. Ha 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 ha, brother, I can't help you. I also heard that you two are a couple. Ningxi looks between the two brothers subtly. Ahem ahem ahem, Lu Jingli is scared and chokes. Damn, that's too heavy. Although I'm as beautiful as a flower, I like both men and women. At this time, someone in the center of the storm slowly stands up from the chair and walks towards Ningxi with his slender legs. Jingli, take Xiaobao out. Ah, brother, what do you want to do? Quote, Lu Tingxiao slowly adjusted his cuffs. Prove to Miss Ning that my sexual orientation is true. Looking at the other side's extremely gloomy and terrible face, and the eyes that seemed to want to tear her apart and swallow her, Ningxi was so scared that she fell off the bed, shrank behind Xiaobao, and almost crawled under the bed. Mr. Liu, this has nothing to do with me. It's all those people outside who are spouting nonsense. Every debt has its debtor. Also, you really don't need to thank me. If you really want me to make a request, then please don't make me make a request anymore. Sorry, I have a very important audition later, I have to go first. Let's meet again if fate wills it. Quote, Ningxi spoke quickly and was about to slip away. However, she had barely taken a few steps when she heard Lu Tingxiao's cold voice behind her. Did I allow you to leave? Ningxi was so scared that her calves and stomach were trembling. My life is over. A few seconds later, under Ningxi's desperate gaze, Lu Tingxiao handed her a piece of paper and a pen. Miss Ning, please leave a note for Xiaobao, in case he gets worried when he wakes up and sees you. Just like that. It was like surviving a calamity. Okay, no problem. I can even write a letter of 10,000 words. Ningxi suddenly breathed a sigh of relief, picked up the pen and began to write. After writing, she was afraid that something might happen, so she rushed away. Looking at the girl's back, the man's eyes were deep, as if looking at a prey that had been put on chains. After Ningxi left, Lu Jingli immediately jumped up and down beside his brother. Brother, am I dreaming? Do you really like Ningxi? 32 years. You've been grinding an iron bar into a needle, but you've never taken a fancy to a girl. Even as your brother, I'm starting to wonder if you're gay. As soon as he said the word gay, he was blocked by his brother. Shut up. Oh, Lu Jingli choked. He was full of gossip, but he couldn't ask. It was really suffocating. Chapter 9. It was rush hour and there was a serious traffic jam. Ningxi was late when she arrived. Chong Li and Ning Shuiluo came out of the audition building happily, surrounded by a group of people who congratulated them. Ning Shuiluo saw Ningxi rushing over with sweat all over her face. The way she looked at her was exactly the same as 5 years ago. It was as if she was looking down on an ant. Seeing Ning Shuiluo get into the nanny van and drive away arrogantly, Ningxi didn't leave. Instead, she quickly ran into the building. It wasn't too late. Halfway there, she bumped into a group of people who were talking and laughing. They were the judges of Under the Heavens. Sorry, I'm late. Ningxi bowed deeply. Looking at Ningxi who suddenly blocked their way, the judges looked at each other in dismay, all looking a little unhappy. No one liked being late. The assistant director said with a straight face, the audition is over. What's the point of coming here now? Young people nowadays are getting more and more unreliable. Quote, I'm not here for the audition. Ningxi said. Oh, you're not here for the audition? Then why are you here for the audition? The scriptwriter asked with interest. I'm here for the second female lead, Meng Chengge. As far as I know, you didn't find a suitable candidate in the last audition for the second female lead. Ningxi raised her head as soon as she finished speaking. The moment Ningxi raised her head, there was at least 5 seconds of silence. The assistant director who had been unfriendly just now was staring at her. The girl had red lips and white teeth. Her black hair reached her waist and she was wearing a bright red dress. Even such a strong color couldn't suppress her beauty. She just stood there quietly, but it was as if she was standing in a misty forest, like a fox that had cultivated for 1,000 years. That pair of enchanting eyes made people fall into the boundless spring scenery if they were not careful. Although her cultivation was deep, it was as if she had never set foot in the mortal world. The bottom of her eyes was pure and clear. What's your name? It wasn't until director Guo Kasheng spoke that the judges woke up. It was as if they had just had a charming dream. Ningxi. Director Guo exchanged glances with the assistant director, scriptwriter and producer and said, I remember you. You're an artist from Xingwei, right? Go back and prepare. You'll be the second female lead. We'll inform you when the shooting starts. Quote, thank you, director. I will prepare well. Ningxi bowed to express her gratitude. From the very beginning, Ningxi's goal was to be the second female lead. For this role, she had pondered for 3 whole months, trying to understand Meng Chengge's feelings and temperament, striving to be able to move the judges at a glance. Although there were many twists and turns, fortunately, she succeeded. After Ningxi left, Director Guo sighed repeatedly. This is really like wearing out iron shoes in fruitless search, only to find it by chance. Although this girl has signed with Starway, her qualifications are too lousy. With such qualifications, she actually came to audition for the female lead. I didn't take it to heart at all, but in the end, I didn't expect her to be so much prettier than in the photos. Quote, the scriptwriter, Yi Linglong, could not suppress her excitement. The most important thing is her temperament. The look in her eyes just now was on point. Before Meng Chengge became a demoness, she was a righteous female general. She could be flirtatious, but she could never be vulgar. She even had to maintain a sense of innocence and detachment from the world. The actresses who came for the audition before acted like I was the courtesan of a brothel. I'm so mad. Quote, ha ha ha, don't be angry. Your song is finally here. Ellipsis. At the same time, in the First People's Hospital of B City. The ward where Little Bun was in The ward where Little Bun was in a complete mess. The little fellow curled up barefoot on the windowsill. He was extremely emotional and shouted at the top of his lungs. No matter what the doctors and nurses said, he wouldn't come down. Lu Jingli was coaxing him like a precious baby, but the little fellow didn't listen to him at all. Lu Jingli had no choice but to call Lu Tingxiao, who had just been called away by the company, back. Chapter 10. Brother, you're finally here. Xiao Bao suddenly went berserk. What happened? Lu Tingxiao asked in a low voice. I don't know. He looked for Ningxi everywhere after he woke up. I thought he might be looking for Ningxi, so I told him not to look for her. The beautiful auntie had left. As soon as I said that, he went berserk. Xiao Bao seems to like Ningxi, but he shouldn't have been so excited when he heard that she had left. Quote, besides, Xiao Bao hadn't been so emotional for a long time. After hearing what had happened, Lu Tingxiao walked straight to his son. Seeing Lu Tingxiao approaching, the little boy immediately shrank back vigilantly. His eyes were full of defensiveness and rejection, and he didn't even recognize his own father. Lu Tingxiao stopped 3 steps away from his son and said calmly, your second uncle told you that auntie has passed away, but he meant it literally. There's nothing wrong with her body, and she's been discharged from the hospital. She hasn't passed away, unlike your grandmother, who left and never came back. Do you understand? Lu Tingxiao would probably only be so patient in front of his son and say such a long sentence in one breath. Lu Jingli was dumbfounded. Are you kidding me? I only said 2 words, I'm leaving, and he's already imagining so much. Quote, in fact, Xiao Bao had seen Ningxi fall with his own eyes. He had been frightened, so it was not surprising that he had misunderstood his father's words. After hearing Lu Tingxiao's explanation, Xiao Bao temporarily stopped screaming, but he still lowered his head and shrank on the windowsill, motionless. So Lu Tingxiao took out a note. She gave it to you. Do you want to read it? Xiao Bao froze and then, as if a switch had been pressed, he raised his head and opened his short arms, asking for a hug. Lu Jingli, all the doctors and nurses. They had been tortured to the point of breaking down, but Lu Tingxiao had solved it with a piece of paper. Lu Jingli had thought that his brother's action of asking Ningxi for a note was unnecessary, but now he was completely convinced. Lu Tingxiao sat down on the sofa with his son in his arms and handed him the note. The little boy couldn't wait to take it. He had already learned how to read it. Baby, thank you for saving me. You're amazing. Moi tilde. Looking at the words on the note and the heart drawn at the back, the little guy's eyes sparkled and his little face seemed to be a little red. Although he pursed his lips reservedly, the corners of his mouth couldn't help but curl up slightly. Needless to say, he looked very cute. Lu Jingli looked as if he had seen a ghost. Damn, did my eyes deceive me just now, brother? Our little treasure actually smiled. I can't even remember when was the last time I saw him smile. What did Ningxi write? Quote, Lu Jingli wanted to peek, but Xiao Bao immediately hid it like a treasure. However, Lu Jingli had already seen it. It was a rather ordinary message. How could it make little treasure so happy? Ningxi was really not simple. Lu Tingxiao didn't say anything. He looked at his son with a gentle gaze. After Xiao Bao woke up, Lu Tingxiao directly took him home and pushed off all the work at the company to stay at home with him. At night, at Supreme Platinum Palace No. 8, the spacious living room was cold and cheerless. Two people, one big and one small, sat opposite each other across the dining table, each with a colder expression than the other. Lu Tingxiao said, "Let's eat." Xiao Bao turned a deaf ear. Lu Tingxiao said, "I'll say it for the last time." Xiao Bao didn't move at all. Lu Tingxiao said, "Do you think a childish threat like a hunger strike will work on me?" Xiao Bao was completely immersed in his own world like an old monk and didn't respond to the outside world. The father and son continued to face each other. An hour later, Lu Tingxiao called Lu Jingli. "Send me Ning Zai's address." Well, it turned out that a hunger strike was quite effective. Lu Jingli was very efficient. He immediately sent Ning Zai's specific address to his brother's cell phone, along with a lot of gossip. Of course, Lu Tingxiao directly ignored them. This time, Xiao Bao didn't need to say anything. Seeing his father pick up his coat and car keys, Xiao Bao immediately followed him. Lu Tingxiao looked down at his son at his feet and bent down to pick him up helplessly. "Just don't do it again."